Every once in a while, a game catches your eye with what seems to be a really unique and great gameplay. Ravenbound is definitely one of those games with some features which look amazing on paper. But is it a game all the fans expected it to be? We'll look at the good, the bad and the ugly, take everything into the account and see if the game is worth a buy now, maybe later, or not at all. First, let's take a look at the game mechanics. The game is a roguelike with permadeath, meaning you get one life to beat the game with. At the beginning of the game you choose your vessel, which determines which weapon you'll use during your run. You can't change the vessel during your run, you're stuck with your choice. If you die, you have to start over and you lose all the progress and equipment you had. Your goal is to cleanse the land of hatred, which you do by defeating enemies and taking the fragments they leave behind. When you have 3 of them, you can empower them, which means you receive 3 cards to choose from, which you can use to make yourself stronger. To use the cards you need to spend mana you amass during your battles. There's also a hatred meter which fills up, and if a hatred card is revealed, bosses and elite enemies get 5% more health and damage every time one hatred card is revealed. We'll talk about this mechanic later, for now let's just say it could have been done better. Now let's take a look at the good. Ravenbound's combat is its best feature. When you learn how to get into the flow, it feels very satisfying. It may seem chaotic at first, but there's a method to the madness, and there's some thrilling moments when you fight a number of goblin or Vitras teleporting ghosts who will cut you down in seconds if you're not careful. Healing potions are extremely limited and expensive. You can buy them in a town and it's used immediately. You can't carry any healing with you. But there's a Bloodborne-like mechanic where you can regain your health by being aggressive and dealing damage to the enemy. The more damage you do, the more health you regain, and you'll have to make a lot of on-the-spot decisions. Will you dodge and try not to get hit more, or risk attacking and regain your health? With dealing damage consistently, your surge meter goes up too, and when it's full you can press a button to deal even more damage for a short time. You have to be quick, standing on one place means death. Even though dodge seems a bit overpowered in comparison with the shield, combat is very nicely balanced and it's fun to fight a camp full of enemies. Also falling in the good category is the card system. There is no level up system, so cards are your only way to get stronger. Cards fall in 3 categories: weapons and armor, resources, and relics. The stronger the card, the more mana it costs, but you'll struggle with mana only if you're extremely unlucky in a run. Relics are basically buffs you receive from weapon damage, critical hit chance to buffing your health. You can get cards from chests in camps, places where other players died, or by empowering free fragments you receive for defeating the enemies. Don't make your choice of cards too quickly, you need to check your options carefully and see which cards give you synergies. Soundtrack is really nice too. I really like the main menu theme and towns theme. Sometimes the music clips a bit or stops in the middle of playing, but you barely notice it. Overall, the soundtrack is pretty good. I wish I could put more in this category, but we're continuing on with the bad. The game's main selling point is you being a raven, and while flying around in a raven form is great, there is a problem. You can only change into raven form on certain spots on the map. I don't know why the decision not to be able to change into raven form at all times. You are a raven possessing the vessel after all, so it doesn't make any sense. While the combat is great when you're fighting enemies in the camps, boss fights are very lackluster. The bosses you encounter are basically the same with the exception of their weapon. It doesn't help their moveset is very similar too. The only difference is their health and damage they deal. If you manage to buff their health and damage too much with hatred mechanic, they're just big sponges. The challenge doesn't come from bosses' movesets or boss mechanics, just from their health. At one time I fought a boss for well over 5 minutes, dodging the same attacks, doing the same thing over and over again. I'd like it if the bosses represented the level you're in and have some interesting mechanics rather than being the same dude with more health. I mentioned the hatred mechanic, and it's a perfect example of bad. Every time you empower your fragments, a meter goes up, and after 5 times the fragment slot is locked. Next time you choose cards, one of them will be Hatred, which gives bosses and elites 5% more health and damage. Those buffs stack with more Hatred cards revealed, so it can get out of hand very quickly. It's okay, I'll just open the chest for cards, you say. Well, almost all of the chests in camps are locked by a Hatred fragment you have to consume. The Hatred fragment has a chance of giving you a Hatred card, so the more chests you open, the more you'll buff your enemies. The number of clean chests is limited per level. When you clear the first main objective of the map, the area around it will be cleansed, and you'll get about 3 to 4 clean chests, which you can open without the fear of penalty. I wouldn't mind it if there was a better risk-reward factor, but right now opening a Hatred chest is just not worth it. Just open the clean ones and go on your way. There is absolutely no reason for opening cursed ones. Even if you're looking for a particular card for your build, it's not worth buffing your enemies. Both bosses and the Hatred mechanic have a very early access feeling at the moment and are hopefully improved on in future patches. Another thing which has an early access feel to it is the maps. They're just very bland, and with the exception of one, they have very similar feel to them. It would be nice if the maps would be themed around the tomb you have to open. Right now it's just a different colored trees and the maps feel a bit lazy. You get one side quest per map and that's it. The towns you visit all have the same feel too. There's your quest giver, healer, blacksmith which sells some armor and weapon cards, a trader who unlocks more relic spots for you, and a gambler. You pay 100 of your very hard-earned gold for a chance of getting a good card. It's mostly worthless, spend your gold elsewhere. If you travel the map on foot, you'll sometimes come across merchants, so you don't have to always travel back to town. But honestly, can you really trust this face? Other than that, there's the tomb you have to open and enemy camps, and you do the same thing on every map, so things can become very repetitive very fast. And if you finish the game once and see the very disappointing ending, there's almost no reason to replay the game. All those problems pale in the comparison with the ugly. Ravenbound has a problem which will be a deal breaker for a lot of people wanting to buy this game. It's always online, even though it doesn't have any social features at all. It's a single player game and the always online requirement is completely unnecessary. You'll have to create the Avalanche Apex account in order to play the game. I don't know if it's to stop the game for being pirated, but always online in a single player game seems weird, and for a lot of people very suspicious. If always online is something you can't get past, you'll want to skip Ravenbound and no one can blame you for it. If you can't get past being online all the time, you'll run into an even bigger problem, and that's the game crashing a lot. I've had the game crash during battles or while flying around as a raven. I stopped the count after the game crashed 7 times in 2 hours. I really tried to ignore it, but then something even worse happened. I exited the game on the last map, and when I came back to it, the game would crash on load. Uninstalling the game didn't help, and when the game somehow managed not to crash on that save, I lost all of my items, making the run impossible. I died on purpose so I could start a new run, but that didn't help. The game didn't even load anymore. I had to remove all of the saves, so I lost all of my progress and unlocks and had to start from the tutorial. I've checked some streams and noticed a lot of people have the same problem. Crashes are a common occurrence, and if you have to worry about your game suddenly stopping at all times, you'll not enjoy it. On my successful run, I was anxious and worried my game would crash, and I'd lose my progress again, and when I beat the game I was relieved. Not because I managed to beat a very hard game, but because it held up. I wanted to like Ravenbound, I really did. From the first time I saw the gameplay I was excited about it and couldn't wait to get my hands on it. Sadly, it seems the game was released too soon. In the current state I cannot recommend anyone to spend their money on this game. Despite the combat in camps being great and flying around in Raven form is fun, the early access feel of the game along with constant crashes is too much of a drawback, and always online requirement doesn't do the game any favors. It's not a bad game, it's just severely undercooked. For this reason, I'm giving it a maybe later badge. I hope the developers can turn things around, but I'm afraid first impressions did too much damage already. Then again, Hello Games turned things around after a disastrous No Man's Sky launch, so maybe in future Ravenbound will reach the potential it has. Until next time, be good to yourself, Goblin out.